A little disclaimer, this will have me singing in it. If you want me to just speak the lyrics, leave a comment behind in the video. Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be reading chapter 5 of Canary by Cloud9 and 3/4. Chapter 5, A Reason to Sing. There are some souls who live their life to a constant beat. Nothing they do is out of rhythm, and this isn't meant in the context of someone who is perfectly organized in everything they do, for that is near to impossible. Life simply cannot be ordered with such precision. Instead, this rhythm is irregular. It has its ups and downs, times where it's a minor key and where it is transitions to a major. This beat can be an invention of the mind, or it can be well known, or perhaps a song or two, or 100, shuffled in a mental playlist to an order which is not random as intensely anticipated. Midoriya is one of those people. He had only been attending UA for a few days, but already there was a spring to his step and a song in his mind that he had not heard for far too long. Background music was what it was like, a soundtrack to his life, long since overdue. Now everywhere he goes, songs creep on him from the deepest depths of his mind. The tunes hanging just past his lips, tantalizingly close to spilling out into reality. Midoriya was considering putting in earplugs and listening to whatever song the radio decided upon as he approached UA's glistening halls. The gigantic building loomed up ahead of him. It wasn't as ominous as it once was, representing nothing but a dream forever out of reach. Now UA was a place where he could find a future. Maybe it wasn't going to be where he had wished it would take him, but did that really matter? Right now, Midoriya was just happy to have gone there at all. The main reason for this, in fact, he just had ran around the corner. "Morning, Midoriya," Shinso exclaimed. Midoriya had never seen him so excited for the day ahead. No, he couldn't quite place it. Something about his whole demeanor seemed different. The eye bags under his eyes were lighter. Was that it? His smile was a little brighter, more genuine. Less of a smirk, more of an actual smile. Midoriya grinned back at him. "Good morning," he said, suddenly slammed his hands over his mouth. The words had just fallen right out. He hadn't even thought about it. No impending panic attack about every thought of releasing the smallest sentence. It was normal, like speaking was supposed to be. Shinso's smile grew wider. "That was an accident," added Midoriya, his hands fumbling over each other. He briefly wondered if his sign was even interpretable. What, speaking?" questioned Shinso, his signature smirk returning to his face as he began to walk up the hill towards school. Midoriya walking faster than usual to keep up with him. Midoriya hesitated. This was strange. It had been a long time since he last was able to talk so freely. Even talking to his mother could be a struggle sometimes. He would avoid it if he could. Yes, he managed before letting out a slight laugh. "Good accident, I hope, and not that you were trying not to talk to me." No, not at all," Midoriya replied. "Oh my god, I'm having a conversation." "So, why were you talking all of a sudden?" He asked hesitantly, as if he was worried the question would put off Midoriya talking altogether. Started Midoriya. He rubbed his throat before glancing back at Shinso, who was staring at him. "Well, usually my throat gets all clogged up when I try to say something, so nothing comes out. Well, honestly, it It meant a lot to me when you spoke yesterday, Shinso admitted, after a moment of silence. Midoriya blinked at him, the confusion etched on his expression. You must be crazy, he continued, to only want to speak to the person who can brainwash you if you do. I can deal with crazy, Midori replied. It was getting a little easier, the more he spoke. Good, Shinso laughed. Because it's only going to get worse from here. I promise you that. I'll hold you to that promise. They walked in silence the rest of the way to school. Yeah, it was silent between them. But as they reached the front of the gates, it was clear the rest of the world had other plans. Is that the press? Shinso wondered out loud, voicing Midoriya's own thoughts. Hey, you're UH students. What is it like having All Might as a teacher? A reporter demanded, thrusting a microphone in the direction of Midoriya. And the clock's back. Back off, Shinso snarled. We're general study students. We're not in the hero course. All Might doesn't teach us. They backed off pretty quickly after that. Shinso grabbed Midoriya's wrist and dragged him harshly through the crowd, and finally into UA grounds. I didn't know he teaches here, Midoriya signed as soon as they were free from the crowd. I heard mutter from some others about it, Shinso admitted. Are you a fan? I was. You were? What happened? Midoriya fiddled with his fingers, unsure of what to say, as they walked through the halls towards Class 1C. He took a deep breath, tugged on Shinso's shoulder, and explained, I was attacked by a villain a while back. All Might saved me afterwards. I asked if I could ever be a hero without a quirk. He said no, that it was good to have dreams, but it had to ensure they were attainable. He said that? Shinso gaped. I was not a huge fan of him to begin with. I'm even less of one now. It doesn't matter, really. So did you talk to him? He asked as they entered their homeroom. Yes, I suppose it's not hard to speak to certain people. I don't think I'd be able to speak to him now, though that was over 10 months ago. I found speaking easier back then. This whole muteness thing only really became a major problem afterwards. Shinso sat down in his desk. I'm glad things are starting to get better now, he sighed. But you don't have to pursue yourself to speak. I can keep translating for you at school if you want. And Cockatoo can too. Midoriya snickered. Cockatoo? Present Mike, obviously. Shinso smirked. Sorry. What is this about Present Mike? Questioned Oshi. She sat next to Shinso in class, so Midoriya couldn't blame her for overhearing. Inside joke, Shinso replied, at the same time as signing. See, this is the problem with speaking out loud. Eavesdroppers. Hey, Midoriya, Oshi continued. I learned some sign language after school yesterday. Is this right? And so she shined. Hello, good morning. How are you? Depends on what you're trying to say, Shinso told her. If you're trying to say hello, good morning, how are you? Then yes. But if not, then no, that's obviously what I was trying to say, Uchi retorted in obvious irritation. But Arya was unsure of what to do in this situation. Just gave her a nervous thumbs up, and it was luckily all he had time to do before Present Mike's bursting through the door in a dramatic manner that was becoming routine at this point. Are you ready for a roll call? He exclaimed. No one replied. Come on, Present Mike yelled. I want to hear yeah! Still no answer. One day, he sighed, and started with the register. Once he had finished, Present Mike didn't disappear off to the teacher's lounge as he usually did. Instead, he sat down at the chair behind his desk. So, you lot have been here for a few days now, and hopefully you've all gotten to know each other. That means it's time to choose. Drumroll, please. No drumroll follows. A class representative. It was a surprise to no one when the long, tedious task of choosing a class president resulted in Oshi coming out on top. Midoriya and Shinto were even more glad when presented Oshi was told to stop her never-ending speech so lesson could begin. I almost regret voting for her now, Shinso sighed. as he walked beside Midoriya to lunch. "I'm just glad I was allowed to opt out," Midoriya sighed in reply. "You could have been a great class representative," Shinzo insisted. "You're really smart and everyone likes you. You don't have to talk to take on those responsibilities." What she was going on about. "I think talking is expected. Sign language had many positives and negatives. First of all, successfully allowed nervous, shy people like Midoriya to communicate without having to speak, and because it wasn't commonly known, he and Shinzo could have secret conversations whenever they pleased. Then again, having Shinzo acting as his translator whenever their conversations weren't secret made him feel extremely guilty. Although his friend insisted it wasn't a problem, another downside was the fact that they had to be facing each other to talk, and both hands to be free. That meant when, for example, carrying trays to their conversations were cut short. Shinso's audible sigh moments after paying for his meal made Midoriya jump. "Our usual table is filled up," he explained. "We'll have to sit next to someone else." While holding his tray, Midoriya couldn't reply, so all he could do was nod, following Shinso as he wandered around the hall. While Midoriya couldn't help but relate the situation to a couple of sharks swimming through hollow waters. The thought made Midoriya chuckle softly underneath his breath. "Mind if we sit here?" Shinso said, eventually drawing Mid out of whatever world he had entered. "Not at all. It seemed rather crowded at the moment, doesn't it?" replied a rather energetic boy Shinso had sat down next to him. Midoriya could already see the annoyance in his eyes. "So anyway, Ida, you're going to make a great class representative. No need to worry about it," the girl Midoriya ended up sitting next to said, finishing whatever conversation she had been having. "Oh, hey, I know you," Midoriya flinched in surprise, turning to the girl. We met on the day of the entrance exam, right?" she confirmed. He nodded frantically, pinning the familiarity of her face to the girl from his first few moments at UA, who stopped him from falling with her quirk. I'm Uraraka, and this is Ida. Nice to meet you both. What class are you in?" Polite Ida and immediately questioned. Once Shinso answered simply, digging into his food without a further glance at the two. "We're in 1A, said Uraraka happily. "What are your names again?" "Shinso and Midoriya," he replied, pointing to Midoriya as he said his name. His throat felt dry. It was strange how earlier that morning his voice had felt freer than it had been, but now, as soon as he was exposed to a more social situation, the walls separating his mind from his mouth was thrown up again, closing him off from the outside world. "Has anyone been expelled from your class yet?" Uraraka asked Midoriya. Yes, she definitely asking Midoriya as she turned to face him and all. We already lost 2 people. No, general studies isn't like the hero course," Shinso said bitterly. "Although I heard the examinations for the entrance to the general studies was quite strenuous, Ida added. They were fine." Shinso clearly was getting quite irritated by the unwanted interaction. "How would you find them?" Uraraka asked Midoriya. She was clearly trying to involve him in the conversation. Midoriya selectively mute, Shinso snapped. Silence followed. Midoriya poked his rice with his chopstick gloomily. Cursed his stupid mouth. Why wouldn't it open when he wanted it to? "Oh, I'm so sorry," Uraraka suddenly exclaimed. Midoriya could do nothing but smile and sign an apology that Shinso translated for him. You know, sign language could be super useful for heroics, Uraraka said, turning to Ida. Changing the conversation abruptly, yes, I suppose it could. I wonder if Mr. Aizawa will let us set something up to allow the class to learn it. He wondered out loud. Yeah, we could talk properly. That was said. That was when a loud, blaring noise filled their ears. Midoriya squealed and covered his ears as the person on the other side of Ida explained the significance behind the sudden alarm. With Midoriya's ears ringing, Shinso dragged him out of his seat and down the halls. A rapid influx of people barged between them, pulling the two apart. Panic set in. It was a toxic mix of fear from the alarm and an anxiety driven from being separated from Shinso. Someone's elbow rammed into his head. Ah! It was Uraraka. Sorry, she exclaimed, once she realized who it was. The two of them were pushed up close to the window overlooking the entrance to the school. Midoriya pulled on Uraraka's shoulder and directed her gaze towards the outside. They were the press crowding an agitated present Mike and a scruffy-looking teacher with long black hair. It's the press! Uraraka exclaimed. She called out for Ida, who had appeared over the crowd, not far from where the two were standing. I have an idea, Midoriya signed to Uraraka on impulse. I'm sorry, I don't understand, she replied. Everyone, calm down. It's just the press, Ida cried out. But his voice couldn't be heard over the din of the rest of the student's body. Midoriya knew what they needed to do. He remembered Uraraka's quirk. She made him float back at the entrance exam. If he could make either himself or Ida float above the heads of everyone else, they could get their attention. He tapped Uraraka's shoulder again. Float, he signed. I don't understand sign language, she repeated. Midoriya pulled at his hair. Come on, yes, float, he tried again. It was a simple sign. Surely it looked enough like it meant float for her to understand. But after yet another fell, Midoriya grasped her wrists and pulled her close to his face and uttered the word, float. Float, she repeated. Midoriya's eyes widened. He hadn't processed what he was doing. Did he really just manage to speak to a stranger? Ida must have heard what Uraraka said, because he reached out his hand over the crowd and yelled, Make me float, Uraraka. And so she did. Midoriya was stunned to see the engine exhaust pipe sticking out the bottom of Ida's legs. With a boost from his quirk, he went spinning across the heads of the students of UA and crashed into the wall above the exit sign. As he yelled his explanation at them, the pushing and pulling of the crowd halted, and Midoriya could breathe a sigh of relief. Shinso pushed through the crowd and made it to their side. Are you okay? He panted. Midoriya nodded furiously, still ecstatic that he had managed to overcome that blockage in his throat and communicate with Uraraka. She was still focusing on making sure that Ida made it safely to the ground before releasing her quirk. I spoke, Midoriya told Shinso excitedly. To her? He frowned. Midoriya nodded and actually bounced on the spot. That was a really good idea, Midoriya, Uraraka exclaimed as the crowd began to part. Thank you, he signed, and Shinso translated. This was immediately followed by Midoriya teaching Uraraka how to sign thank you, whilst Ida hurried over to them. Shall we go back to our seats before our lunch gets cold? Ida suggested. Sure, replied Uraraka. Look, this is how you sign thank you. What did you say to her? Shinso questioned as they all walked back to the cafeteria. Only the word float. She couldn't figure out what I meant and sign, and I was really frightened that you'd gone. I'm surprised I didn't manage to say it. Oh, what were you trying to sign to me earlier? Uraraka questioned. Did that mean float? Midoriya nodded. Can you show me again? The rest of lunch break consisted of mainly teaching Uraraka and Ida various words in sign. Despite the panic diverted from the press attack, by the end of the day, Midoriya wouldn't hesitate to admit that it had been one of the best days he had for a long time. And it wasn't over yet. Although it didn't take long for Midoriya to realize Shinzo seemed a little bit off as the day ended. No, it couldn't be. Was Shinzo jealous of Midoriya speaking to Uraraka? Thank you for helping me today, Midoriya told him as the two of them left school. What did I do again? He sighed. Midoriya took a deep breath. You gave me the courage to speak. Shinzo's eyes widened. Whatever emotion he could have been storing up immediately tossed to the wind. I did? I don't think I could have ever done that if you hadn't been so kind to me. It was clear his friend didn't quite know how to respond. I could only say one word, but that was one word was more than usual. He laughed meekly. Hey, wait up, you two. Midoriya jumped. As he and Shinzo turned, it was Uraraka again, with Ida jogging by her side. Are you guys heading off to the train station? We'll come too, she explained. I don't go all the way to the train station, Shinzo admitted. Midoriya does. We should walk together after school. Would that be cool? Uraraka questioned Midoriya. He nodded briskly, but then hesitated and glanced at Shinzo. His friend smirked at him and gave him a reassuring nod. Yes, Midoriya stammered. The two hero students looked like they were about to cry. Even Ida clutched his heart. They barely knew Midoriya, but speaking meant this much to them. The four talked animatedly as they wandered slowly towards the train station. Midoriya's comments were few and far between, but he was just honored to feel so included. Ida and Uraraka explained that they had researched what selective mutism was between lessons that afternoon, and they were so thrilled that Midoriya had managed to overcome his mental barriers to speak with them. After such a short space in time, Midoriya was quickly to make sure they knew Shinzo was part in all of this. He wasn't sure if it was really their openness that allowed him to speak or more the trust in Shinzo. Midoriya would admit to being more than a little fearful when they parted ways with Shinzo. He was so worried that as soon as his friend was gone, the clog in his throat would return. But although he could feel it there, somehow he could push past his sentences were filled with more stutters. He spoke slowly and quietly, but Uraraka and Ida were patient. And as Midoriya stepped off the train and made his way home, that spring in his step was oh so much clearer. Mom, I'm home, he called out as he closed the door to his house behind him. Izuku, she exclaimed as she hurried into view, her face displaying a rather shocked expression. How was your day? You seem really happy. Yeah, he replied, putting his rucksack and taking off his tie. I talked to Shinzo. He talked? Unko cried. Really, Izuku, I'm so proud of you. It's really nothing, Mom. It isn't. I managed to speak a couple of other people as well. Who? Ida and Uraraka. They're in the hero course. Maybe they know Kachan. She squealed something that Izuku couldn't have possibly deciphered as she pulled him into a hug. I haven't started making dinner yet, but how about katsudon? I know it's one of your favorites. Oh, okay, he replied, but I'm going to get changed out of my uniform first, and maybe go out for a bit. Where? She asked curiously. Oh, I just found this empty stretch of beach not far from here. It's really quiet. I just wanted to go mess around on my guitar for a bit. Of course, Inko replied, but be back soon. You wouldn't want to go your dinner to get cold, and it looks like it might rain in a bit. Okay, Mom. And with that, he pulled on the rest of his first set of clothing he located in his drawers, grabbed his guitar case, and ran out the front door. Inko gazed fondly out the window as her son rushed off to reach the beach he mentioned before. It rained. He always loved to play whenever he was feeling emotional, whether it was because he was sad or angry, or apparently really happy. It had been so long since she'd seen him like this. It was about 10 months ago, after he leaped in to pull Katsuki away from the sledge villain attack, when he truly began to fall silent. He hadn't been great before, always fidgeting and stuttering, dreading the dawn of a new day. But it just got worse and worse as time went on. She was glad she'd convinced Izuku to take the entrance exam to UA, despite not being able to shoot for the hero course. This could really be the start of something wonderful. His mom was right about the rain. Midoriya couldn't see the ocean in its true majestic because of the looming clouds. But he didn't care. He was looking forward to the tranquility of the trash-covered beach of Dagoba. He didn't mind its filthy state, if it meant he could play with whatever he wanted without disturbing anyone. He also knew that his mother wouldn't have minded if him playing in the house. In fact, she seemed rather to enjoy it. But Midoriya just wanted to be alone that evening, after such an eventful day. He sat on top of the same pile of garbage that he had the first time he ventured into the sandy wasteland, leaving the case of his guitar by the abandoned boardwalk. Thunder crackled above him, and the cloud's first teardrops trickled down Midoriya's cheeks. Too late to hurry home, he just sat there and let the heavens open above him. He's not a thought concerning the welfare of his guitar crossing his mind. He let it out in the rain before. It certainly hadn't been too happy about the ordeal, but the water didn't have any long-lasting effects. Perhaps a certain waterproofing had been done to the wood. Despite the heavy clouds, Midoriya could still see the slightest hint of fading day, an orange that swept across the sky, illuminating the raindrops and swelling waves ever so slightly in a way that gave the illusion of fire, rippling across the ocean and sky. He smiled and began to play his first song that crossed his mind. It was a song that perhaps he would come to regret, but at the same time look back on with a grin wider than he spotted at the moment. Set Fire to the Rain, Adele. This would be because as the first chords rang out over the beach, something stirred in Midoriya's mind, swirling in his chest. It was a feeling that always had been there. An emotion of sorts that he only felt as he began to play his music. It was one of the reasons that he loved it so much. He just felt like he belonged to the rhythm. It was where he could forget the world and immerse himself in an entirely new one of his own. There was a lightness about this feeling today. It rose up past the familiar clog of his throat, washing it away. And this was why, with a thought in the back of the friendly faces he had become accustomed to seeing, that of his friends, his confidence budded, and he opened his mouth, and he sang, "My hands, they're strong, but my knees were far too weak." He let his voice echo across the beach, filling every crevice, nook, and cranny. He loved the way it reverberated in his chest, a feeling long lost within him. He had sung it before, of course. Everyone had at some point, whether it was simply humming along to the radio or a gleeful chorus of happy birthday at a friend's party. His mother had said there was something about Izuku's singing, a certain magic to it that no one could quite describe. It was as if he always conveyed the meaning of a song, brought it out like an emotion, and it intent into the world around him without a certain effort. But never before had he truly poured himself into a song like he did today. I set fire to the rain. I set fire to the rain. Watched it pour. It was as though he was playing an ancient instrument, one he had with him for as long as he could remember, but never had the confidence to test and try. His throat felt sore, raspy from underuse, but somehow the music pushed through. When I lay with you, Midoriya gazed into the distance, eyeing the horizon. As the sun continued to set, there was a break in the clouds now, not enough to stop the rain nor blind him with the fading sun, but enough to see its hazy silhouette above the earth's curvature. The rain wetted his hair and made the strings of his guitar slippery and difficult to navigate. Whenever he struck a wrong note at some point, or not, he could never have known. He was so lost in the music that it just didn't concern him anymore. Neither did the clinging of his clothes to his skin, or the salt of the air stringing on cracked lips. The rain, it glowed with the light of the sunset. It was so bright that each droplet could have been a star of its own. His mind played tricks when the drops sizzled as they landed on his guitar. But then the second chorus began. But I set fire to the rain. And the rain, it burned. The music came to an abrupt stop as Midoriya yelled, falling into the pile of rubbish he just perched upon, and into the water below. With the sound of the song gone, the flames too began to fade, put out by the rain, which no longer fueled it. Midoriya sat there, breathing heavily in fear, knee-deep in the ocean, and the waves tossed the salted water over his back. His guitar head fell a few feet away from him. Slowly he crampled his feet, wandered through the water and retrieved it. It was covered in scorch marks. Midoriya blinked as he stared up at the sky, and felt the rain pitter-patter against his face. The sun had set, the lighting illuminating the clouds had gone. So why had the rain continued to glow? Did he hallucinate? Why was his guitar covered in spots of black soot, whilst his skin remained unharmed? Why did the beach continue to smolder around him? Hot pools of water seeped into his shoes as he climbed out of the sea and back onto the beach. Midoriya felt the ground by his guitar case. He tested the water that he had collected inside of it. Hot, almost too hot to touch. I set fire to the rain, Midoriya mumbled as the water felt heavier down on his head. It was this moment that Midoriya's troubled mind drifted back to his entrance exam to UA, and to his answer to a certain question. However, the recombinant frequency of quirklessness and having an extra toy joint is so low, because the Alice are so close together, that the inheritance of either gene separately is near to unheard of, he said out loud to himself. Near to, not impossible, rare, but possible. He tilted back his head and cried one last time, I set fire to the rain. But nothing happened. You're going crazy. Something must have leaked from the garbage, burnt the guitar, and the hot water is just from the sunlight heating it up. Yeah, definitely, Midoriya reasoned, pacing back and forth. But What if he's singing? Midoriya pulled out his phone, struggling to unlock it in the pouring rain, as his mom hadn't messaged him quite yet. He still had time before he had to head home. He bit his lip. There's got to be a way to try this. And so he tapped on his downloaded music and managed to reach the playlist created for his dance class, filled with normal and karaoke versions of hundreds of songs that he danced over to the years. And he tapped on the song he'd been looking for. A smile returned to his face as a familiar beat filled his ears. Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves. I used to think maybe you loved me, now baby I'm sure. He let himself prance across the sand, jumping on top of the half-buried objects, discarded there years ago. He twisted in the air, thoughts of a burnt guitar lost once more to the back of his mind as the upbeat rhythm consumed him. Now every time I go for the mailbox, gotta hold myself down. He laughed, dragging his feet in the sand as he almost tripped over an old tire. The rain had drenched him at this point, and his dip in the ocean hadn't helped. But now he couldn't even feel the coolness of the rain as it grew heavier. Still, he was completely lost in his dance, not caring about the squelching of his shoes and the sand stuck to the back of his trousers. Now I'm walking on sunshine, whoa! And that was when the clouds right above his head parted, and a rain of beaming ray of sunlight illuminated the spot where he stood, following his every movement like a spotlight. And as the chorus ended, laughing in ecstasy, he fell into the ground and turned off the music on his phone. The sunlight faded once more. Now that it couldn't have been a coincidence, the sun had already set. In Midoriya's mind raced. Thoughts of what would happen if he kept singing mingled with that of the other songs and, oh my god, I have a quirk. He leapt to his feet and screamed into the sky, I have a quirk! His phone buzzed. It was his mother, wondering where he was. A grin still plastered across his face. Midoriya raced back over to his guitar case, zipped it shut, grabbed its handle, and took off. He nearly ran all the way home, only stopping when he had run out of breath. He tucked it inside and closed the door behind him. Izuku, what happened? Did you really stay out in the rain? His mother cried when her son walked back in, dripping water everywhere. But then her gaze reached the expression on his face. What happened? She demanded. Izuku, you're scaring me. Mum, he said shakily, shivering with the cold. But he didn't mind. Mum, I have a quirk. But that's impossible. What is it? Singing, he breathed. Singing, but what about your toy joint? It's possible, he explained, dropping the sudden guitar case by the door and pulling the instrument out of the tipping excess liquid out of it and dropping it by the radiator so it could dry. Rare, very rare, but not impossible. So by definition, he said, grasping Inko's shoulders, possible. Tears welled in her eyes. Are you sure, Izuku? Mom, I set fire to the rain, and he held up his scorched guitar. I set fire to the rain. She stroked the spots of ash on the instrument, gazing at the black substance left on her fingers. You have a quirk, she stammered before she let her tears flow. You sang! And Midoriya was crying too, tears mixing with the rainwater and the salt of the sea left behind on his clothes. But that was only the beginning. I hope you liked this chapter. Yeah. Let me know in the comments if your reactions and such. Yeah. Have a nice day or night, and see you next time.